Yeah.
not
Yeah.
somebody to talk to you about
Yeah.
how the caste system worked. But basically, you couldn't accept food that was kacha, that was soft, that had been cooked like rice from somebody of a lower caste. You could, and then foods that had been fried were a little bit safer and so on. So that
Mm.
you end up with people, Brahmins only employ Brahmin cooks, and um who you can eat from and whether you would eat in the same space together, and and it becomes an incredibly complex means of differentiating who you are within India. And what's interesting about it is that I think, I mean, you see it breaking down. I mean, I'm thinking of Kerala as the place I know about most where that breaks down. When women of the Naya caste have to go out and work, then they don't want to eat with the other groupings who are eating. But then eventually they eat in the same room with them, but they won't accept their food from them. And then over time, once they become friends, they do accept food. So caste restrictions do break down, but it's a because food's so important to who you are, and I guess it is because it's part of who you are in terms of your caste identity. It's also really hard to break down. And I think that might be also one of the reasons why it stays with the diaspora, because food has become so integral to who you are as a person from South Asia. But what I think is interesting is when the British arrive with their kind of outcast. You don't want to eat with them. You don't even, I mean, I still had people who didn't really want to shake my hand, didn't want to even touch you. You're kind of dirty. And especially the early British East India people, I mean, it must have been really quite revolting. So I think, but what's interesting is that then the British introduced tea, and you can drink, everybody of all castes can drink tea, and everybody of all castes can drink tea in the same space. So it breaks down caste. Or there's a chap who describes how his mother is very, she has separate plates for visitors and so on. But then when they get the shiny white ceramic plates from the Europeans, she doesn't mind sharing that with somebody who isn't of the same caste. They can eat off those plates because they wash clean so nicely. And so there's a kind of biscuits and sodas that the British introduced. These are all kind of seen as somehow outside the caste system, and therefore a means, a way of, you can share them across caste. So I think that's caste is such a complicated and difficult thing to talk about in a few minutes, but I think it's very interesting because it makes very rigid rules for eating. And of course, that's why for the longest time, India doesn't really have restaurants and so on, which of course it
Yes.
doesn't.
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
nobody wants to go out and eat in a restaurant because you won't only want to eat food that's being cooked by someone who you know and trust and is of the right caste. Interesting that you say that, because I've always thought, trying as a British person who has no instinctive understanding of the system, that when you read about it, and of course, the British tried to codify it very early on and solidify and pin it down, just as they sent Buchanan around to kind of say, yes, in this village they do this and those people live there and they grow that food. They did the same thing with caste. They tried to pin it down. They got Brahmin scholars to tell them, okay, what exactly is this system? Should we understand it? And so they kind of solidified it and made it rigid and made it a system. But whenever I've tried to understand it by reading about all this, I thought, but I can't understand. None of this that I'm reading makes any sense when you go out and
Yeah.
read about, talk to any Indians. So it's really interesting that you say that, because I've always assumed I just don't understand it. But yes, it's a very strong sense that there's within a region, there are groupings of people who do particular jobs or tasks, and then they belong to that group. And they also, that's translated then into the food, isn't it? So they do rice, they do their rice that way. This lot do their rice differently. These eat wheat, those don't. So I think it's this incredible tiny a patchwork made up of tiny details. And I think caste and food go together very strongly.
Huge.
Yes, and it brings them
Thousands
back.
of